It was just another scorching summer day in Saudi Arabia. Until, in an instant, it wasn't. Inside the offices of Saudi Aramco, one of the world's largest oil companies, employee computer screens began flickering and going black by the dozens. Then hundreds. In a matter of minutes, 30,000 machines were effectively dead. Their files erased and their monitors displaying nothing but the eerie image of a burning American flag. Panicked phone calls flooded the IT help desk as workers realized something had gone terribly wrong. Printers stopped working, email and phone systems went silent. The digital heartbeat of a global oil empire flatlined without warning. In August 2012, Saudi Aramco had just become victim to one of the most devastating cyber attacks in history. A silent digital assault that brought a corporate giant to its knees. To understand the impact of Shamoon, one must first understand the target. Saudi Aramco is the colossal, state-owned oil company of Saudi Arabia. By some measures, the most valuable and profitable company on the planet. It controls roughly a quarter of the world's oil reserves, with sprawling operations from wellheads in the desert to refineries and tankers delivering fuel worldwide. By 2012, Aramco employed over 50,000 people and relied on a vast network of computers to manage everything. Drilling operations, refining, shipping logistics, sales, payroll, you name it. This immense digital infrastructure was Aramco's nervous system, connecting tens of thousands of PCs and servers across the globe. That also made it a tantalizing target for someone looking to cause chaos. What's more, Aramco's IT network had a critical weakness. It was remarkably flat and unsegmented. In simpler terms, once an intruder got inside even one computer on the network, they could wander through much of the company's systems with little resistance, like an open-plan office with no locked doors between rooms. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. In mid-2012, the first few stealthy footsteps of the Shamoon attack likely took place. According to later investigations, hackers managed to infiltrate Aramco's network months before the big attack, possibly through a spear-phishing email sent to an unsuspecting employee. All it took was one click on a malicious link or attachment, and the attackers slipped inside. With Aramco's focus primarily on securing its oil production facilities, the corporate IT side was comparatively vulnerable. Once in, the intruders moved methodically, mapping out the network and escalating their access. They found their way to the powerful domain controllers, the servers that acted as the company's digital directory and gatekeeper. And from there, they essentially gained the keys to the kingdom. For several weeks, the hackers quietly prepared their digital time bomb, embedding malware on as many PCs as possible. Crucially, they set their plan to go off at a very specific moment. Timing was everything. August 15, 2012 fell near the end of Ramadan, a period when many of Aramco's staff, and most of Saudi Arabia, were on holiday or working limited hours. The company was running on a skeleton crew, with minimal oversight in the offices. It was the perfect moment to strike without interference. The attackers' goal was not espionage or stealthy data theft.
It was out-and-out destruction. They wanted to send a message by crippling the backbone of Saudi Arabia's economy. And so, like saboteurs setting explosives and slipping away, they primed their malicious code with a trigger set for mid-morning on that day. The stage was set for a digital cataclysm. On August 15, 2012, at precisely 11:08 a.m. local time, the hidden virus detonated. Across Aramco's network, the malware, now known as Shamoon, sprang into action simultaneously on thousands of infected machines. In technical terms, Shamoon was a wiper, a breed of malicious software designed not just to steal or spy, but to destroy. And destroy it did. In offices and control rooms, employees watched in horror as their computers froze and went blank. Files and data that took years to accumulate were being erased in seconds. The virus systematically overwrote hard drives, obliterating documents, emails, databases, everything, and replacing some of that data with a garish calling card, an image of a US flag engulfed in flames. It was as if the attackers wanted not only to cripple the company, but to taunt it with a symbolic insult. The scale of the damage was almost beyond comprehension. Approximately 30,000 workstations, roughly 85% of Aramco's entire computer fleet, were rendered completely unusable within hours. If one were to line up that many destroyed computers end to end, they would stretch for miles. In practical terms, it meant an entire corporation's digital operations had been virtually wiped out in one blow. Employees who tried to reboot their PCs found nothing but error messages. The master boot records of their drives, the part that makes a computer start up, had been wiped clean. Offices that moments before hummed with the constant background noise of email pings, printer chattering, and phones ringing now felt eerily quiet, save for the alarmed voices of staff.
This wasn't just a network outage. This was a company-wide digital blackout. Critical business functions came to an immediate halt. Oil production data, shipping schedules, and inventory management systems went dark, although the oil wells and refineries kept running on isolated control systems. Thankfully, Shamoon did not penetrate the industrial control network, so the physical flow of oil continued. Aramco suddenly had no way to coordinate those operations or know where the oil was supposed to go. Tanker trucks queued up with no digital instructions on deliveries. The company's internal and external communications were largely cut off. With email down and even internet phones disabled, Aramco had lost it to effectively communicate both internally and with customers. Even the basic tools to troubleshoot the problem were gone. Many of the company's diagnostic and backup servers had been knocked out by the malware as well. In the space of a morning, the most valuable company in the world was forced back into the pre-computer age. In the immediate aftermath, the scene at Aramco was one of confusion and crisis management. With so much of the network down, the company's leadership and remaining IT staff scrambled to contain the attack and assess the damage. Fearing that the Shamoon virus might spread even further, or possibly jump to the industrial control systems, Aramco's executives made a drastic decision. They pulled the plug on the entire corporate network. The company disconnected from the internet completely, isolating itself like a fortress under siege. This move was unprecedented, one of the world's petroleum giants voluntarily severing its online links, but it likely prevented further harm. It also meant Aramco was effectively operating in the blind. In those first hours, emergency response teams were set up like war rooms, and the remaining unaffected communication lines, including personal, mobile phones, and even fax machines, were put to use to coordinate the response. For a company of Aramco's scale, recovering from Shamoon was a staggering task. Imagine having to replace or rebuild 30,000 computers as fast as possible. It was an IT nightmare on a massive scale. Yet Aramco had the resources to throw at the problem. The Saudi government and Aramco's leadership spared no expense. They commandeered the company's private fleet of jets to fly in tens of thousands of new hard drives and computer units from suppliers around the world. Legend has it that Aramco's frantic buying temporarily drove up global prices for hard disks, as they scooped up every available unit to replace the obliterated ones. Teams of technicians worked around the clock, imaging new drives, restoring systems from whatever backups remained, and getting essential workstations up and running again. Meanwhile, employees had to resort to old-school methods to keep the business moving. In offices, staff dusted off typewriters and fax machines and used personal cell phones for communication, since the modern tools were all dead. Some departments literally went back to pen and paper to record transactions and organize schedules. Despite the immense destruction, Aramco managed a remarkably swift recovery by sheer will and deep pockets. Within about a week to 10 days, the company announced that its core networks were up and running again. By August 28th, less than 2 weeks after the attack, Saudi Aramco publicly stated that it had restored its main systems and resumed normal operations. This restoration was almost miraculous in speed given the scale, a testament to the thousands of new components and the all-hands-on-deck repair effort. However, the scars were still evident. During those chaotic days, the disruption was felt beyond just Aramco's offices. Saudi Aramco is the primary supplier of fuel to the kingdom and a key exporter globally. The cyber attack had briefly threatened fuel distribution. In the days immediately following the wipe, some local gas stations in Saudi Arabia started seeing fuel shortages as the logistical system struggled to catch up using manual workarounds. Globally, oil traders watched nervously, and officials feared that if Aramco couldn't get its operations back on track quickly, the world's oil supply and markets could be thrown into turmoil. Aramco averted that nightmare scenario by improvising, at one point instructing workers to load tankers with oil manually and send them out even without digital records to ensure supply continued. In some cases, essentially giving away oil until proper accounting systems were back online.
It was messy, but it kept the lifeblood of the economy flowing. Step by step, the giant found its footing again, but the message sent by the attackers was loud and clear.
From the moment the attack became public, the question on everyone's mind was, who was behind Shamoon? Such a wide-scale, damaging assault on a major corporation, especially one so vital to a nation's economy, was unprecedented. It didn't take long for clues to emerge. On the very day of the attack, while Aramco's IT staff were still dousing the digital flames, a previously unknown group stepped forward to claim responsibility. Calling themselves the Cutting Sword of Justice, the hackers posted a manifesto on an online forum, taunting Aramco and the Saudi government. In this fiery statement, which appeared on Pastebin around the time of the attack, they accused the House of Saud, Saudi Arabia's ruling family, of corruption and crimes throughout the Middle East. They railed against Saudi involvement in conflicts in countries like Syria and Bahrain, and they singled out Aramco as the main financial source fueling the regime. By attacking Aramco, they proclaimed, they aimed to hit the Al Saud rulers where it hurt, in the oil revenues. The manifesto even boasted, with eerie accuracy, that 30,000 computers had been destroyed, and promised this was just the first step of their cyber attack. As if to underscore their ideological motive, the malicious image of the burning US flag on Aramco's screens hinted at anger not just toward Saudi leadership, but also toward its Western allies.
Was this the work of hacktivists with a grudge, or something more? Early speculation ran rampant. Some security analysts noted that the Shamoon malware shared certain traits with a prior cyberweapon that had hit Iran's oil industry earlier in 2012, a virus called Wiper, that erased data in Iranian oil ministry systems. Want more details about it? See our previous video about Stuxnet. This raised a tantalizing possibility. Was Shamoon a case of turnabout, a retaliation from Iran against Saudi Arabia? After all, Saudi Aramco could be seen as a proxy target for Western-aligned interests, and knocking it down was symbolically and economically satisfying for Iran, or its sympathizers amid regional tensions. Over the next weeks and months, U.S. intelligence and other international investigators increasingly pointed fingers in that direction. By October 2012, unnamed U.S. officials were quoted in the press saying they believed Iran was behind the Aramco attack, possibly in revenge for not only the earlier cyber strikes on Iran, but also as payback for Saudi Arabia's political stance in the region.
The cutting sword of justice, in this theory, was not a lone band of misfits, but rather a front for a state-sponsored operation orchestrated from Tehran, or at least an operation by Iran-aligned hackers with significant resources. Iran, for its part, officially denied any involvement, dismissing the accusations. To this day, the true identities of the Shamoon attackers have never been publicly confirmed, and the cutting sword of justice vanished as mysteriously as it appeared, leaving only its bold claim behind. What is clear is that Shamoon was a new kind of cyber weapon in its intent. Unlike many cyber attacks that aim to steal data or spy, this was a blunt instrument of destruction and disruption. It wasn't about quiet espionage, it was about sending a loud message. And the attackers succeeded in getting that message across globally. The Shamoon virus didn't stop with Saudi Aramco either. Just 2 weeks after Aramco's takedown, a similar attack hit Rasgas, a major natural gas company in neighboring Qatar. Rasgas's networks were knocked offline in late August 2012 by a virus that security experts believe was a variant of Shamoon as well. This implied that the campaign was not isolated to one company. It was going after energy sector targets important to Gulf states. The twin hits on the Saudi and Qatari energy companies, which together form a significant chunk of the world's oil and gas supply, were a stark warning that cyber warfare had broadened to include economic targets. In later years, the Shamoon malware would resurface in new forms, often dubbed Shamoon 2 or 3, striking Middle Eastern organizations again in 2016, 2017, and even 2018.
Each time it carried that same DNA of a destructive wiper, as if the ghost of the 2012 attack kept coming back to haunt new victims. Whether directly controlled by a nation or copied by other hackers, Shamoon's legacy as a tool of sabotage was firmly established.
The Shamoon attack on Saudi Aramco felt like fiction. Stealthy entry, a timed detonation, and a wipe that bricked tens of thousands of machines in hours. It was real, and it reset expectations. Shamoon didn't rupture pipelines or injure workers. It proved that code alone can shove a global enterprise into the pen and paper past. In Washington and elsewhere, it became shorthand for a potential cyber Pearl Harbor, the kind of strike that can paralyze business and critical services. The question shifted from if to when, and whether an organization could rebuild if every endpoint died at once. Aramco's recovery was fast, but the lesson endured. Destructive cyber operations had arrived in the corporate domain. Not just ministries and militaries, banks, energy firms, and other economic pillars sat squarely in scope. Shamoon remains a caution. Resilience now means segmented networks, protected backups, and practice recovery, plus plans for communicating and shipping when the screens go dark. The next shock may start the same way. A quiet click, a long wait, and a morning when nothing boots. If this cyber saga gripped you, we drop new, cinematic breach stories every week. Subscribe to our channel, Cyber Nightmares, and never miss the next hack, heist, or takedown.